Internet, we are back. We are back. Got a little juice in my phone. And what I've essentially done is I've sort of pushed this out into shape just to kind of cover the space that we want and started laying out sort of the groundwork for where the tentacle is going to be. Look at that super shiny, smooth green stuff. So now what we're doing is we're just, again, I mentioned before, like once you get like a pattern going, it really can kind of change things a lot. So even if it's not sculpted great, if it's got like a consistent kind of pattern, it's going to work. So what we're just doing is, can I bring this back and turn it like that, give you some more light that I see? I don't want it like too bright to wash everything out, but I need to be able to see it too. So what we're just doing is we're just kind of going along and we're kind of pushing this up. And then we're kind of like pushing it down, pushing it up, and pushing it down. Just gotta jam it in there a little bit. I'll do the same on this side. Push that up, push that down. Get in there, push it up, and then push it down. And then kind of looking at this guy as our point of reference, we can kind of use this just to see like what kind of like little curves and little things along the back we're going to do. So we'll use this for some of it. Just kind of push that in. And then smooth it out a little bit. And I kind of want it like bumpy like that. I kind of like that'll make it, I think, easier for texture wise and painting wise. Breaks up the model a little bit. We could really try to smooth it out. I realize in doing this is probably too big of a piece to do at once. Like I should have done this in sections. But I didn't. I'm just worried about the green stuff starting to get hard to work with. Because it's been a little while now. But we're just pushing it down, kind of to match where the tentacle goes down. All right, and then we're kind of smoothing that out a little bit. And I'm using different curves all the time because this has so many different curves. That's why I like this so much. Because if I just start doing the exact same spot of the tool and get the same curve, then it starts looking a little less organic. So this really helps it. And then on the inside where it's curling, we'll want to make those a little deeper, so we use that point. I can also probably use this for some of these. So that's up, that's down, that's up, that's down, that's up, up, down, up, down, up, down. There's a nice big, I'm kind of using just some you know, where this got pushed up when I was sculpting it to help guide it to. Make those a little more pronounced. It's a big model, you need to show these off a little bit. Push that down, push that down. All right, something like that. We'll try to make this an even number of little ups and downs, little dipsy doodles on each side for the sake of these little ridges, these little ribs. Right, the first one didn't really look that cool when I started doing it, but right now that I've done a couple of them, and we're kind of not making it too dramatic, right? It's starting to come together, internet. You see that? Starting to come together, starting to look pretty sweet. All right, we're gonna, let's see if we can sort of like blast through here. Up and down. Up and down. All right, I've also got this here to sort of hold on to the end. That lets me work on this side a little easier. It actually started to come a little loose in here as I was working on this. Plus it's kind of hard to hold on it that far out and then have the leverage I need down here, so. In and out. In and out. The other thing I try to do, and sort of like when I was removing that nose ring, right? I kind of was like, oh, let's put a little bit of a scar on his lip. That'll look cool, just because like that started to kind of take shape as I was doing it. When I was doing this, it kind of got a little wider at the end, and it almost was kind of like a little sucker pod kind of at the end, like tapering out, like at the end of I think some squid arms, right? They kind of do that, which is different than an octopus. So we're going to try and put some of that in here. And then it's kind of running into, what I may end up having to do is like really just sort of like clip half of this off, because this is kind of actually now where I want it to end. But I've got a bunch of dry stuff that's there that never really got sculpted, because I was planning on going farther with it. But so we'll see. We'll see what we end up deciding to do. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah, you can. Because what's the point of recording all this, internet, if you can't see it? All right, we'll bring it down around here. It is at some weird angles, holding on to it with these little pliers, this little multi-tool. So I'm hoping you can see it, but like I got to be able to see it too. All right, we'll pull this out. So part of what I'm trying to do here is, as I was starting to sculpt it, it was kind of looking a little round, and I realized like where the tentacle part, where the little suckers and stuff are going to be, I wanted that to feel a little more flat and then much more rounded on the other side. So I kind of really tried to push this flat, and then as I was pushing it flat, I started pushing the sides like straight down to sort of get that look, because it's sort of like how it goes here, right? Like there's much more tentacle on the top part, and the bottom part is a little flatter, a little bit less than half. So maybe it's like 2/3 of the top part and then 1/3 of the bottom. So we had to kind of make that work. So actually, I realized I probably should be working at it from this side, because then I can sort of like count the little things, the little undulations in it. Just to sort of make them match on both sides. So, I mean, it's looking good even like this, but this is sort of like just the rough work of kind of like starting to putting those spots in, so we know where we're going to have it. So we kind of want to, let's take this, and we'll start to give it a little bit more definition on the bottom. Where those little ripples are going to be. And then we'll have to go in and like redefine them as well, but we'll kind of use that. So I'm just kind of pushing this in, bumping the camera with it as well, but just sort of like pushing this in and then sort of like dragging it back and forth, just to kind of help put that line in. But I want to go back and forth so it doesn't make too much of like a distinct like angular kind of a line, so you don't just see like a bunch of pokes. It kind of looks like one continuous line, but I kind of want to be able to push it in a little bit as well. So we're just getting in there, getting it done. Let's go to the other side. Yeah, some of these we really got to push under. In the beginning, I was using this tool because it was doing a really good job just pushing everything right in there and making it really easy. But then you can see it started almost like cutting it a little and kind of putting like a weird texture in there that I didn't really want. So okay, so this tentacle is obviously a lot bigger than that little tentacle I'm using as reference. So that's really, that little one that I keep pulling up is really just sort of like a guide to how I want this to go, but I'm not using that as sort of like my end all be all. I'm not necessarily trying to mimic that exactly. But it's a great reference point to get started and give me some ideas. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. And I think I'm going to do the little suction cups. I'm sure there's a scientific name for them. I'm going to do those, I think, once this dries, actually. I just don't know if I'm going to have time to really kind of get them all in there. The other thing too with green stuff that will always happen is if you're working with too big of a piece for too long, you're gonna have a spot that you had really great, and you're gonna jam a finger into it or jam a tool into it and just like ruin some work that you already did. So green stuff, especially if you're doing a big project, a big conversion, is definitely, you gotta have some patience because you're gonna need to stop, let it set, come back to it the next day. So a lot of times I recommend working on models in stages, you know, so if I were, I mean, this is a big enough piece just to be enough for one session. Like I don't have to feel like, oh, I just did a little piece of a shoulder or one little tentacle, right? Like this is a whole project, so this is fine. But this might also be something where you really want to do a whole army and have sort of like a bunch of stuff ready to go. So now that we've put that in, we're just going to kind of work it back and forth until we get it where we want. So I'm going to kind of pull this back out, pull this back in. You know, as we go back and forth, it's going to start to make the green stuff get stretched out a little bit more, get a little thinner, so you're going to be able to put crisper and deeper lines in as we kind of work it back and forth. Sort of like bending a piece of plastic or a piece of metal, right? You keep bending it, it kind of like weakens and then breaks. But this is like, you know, just bending and getting more like malleable because it's getting thinner, right? It's not going to break, obviously. Not at this stage, right? If it had been dry and we try to move these, obviously, you know. But that's not what we're talking about. All right, so these definitely need to get pushed out. This is going to be an interesting one for me because this model is huge, right? This is a big model. And, you know, let's be honest, the Gargant's not quite as big as I thought it was going to be. I still think it's a really big model. It's really sweet. I like it. I'm happy with it. But if it had been like another 25% bigger, you know, I definitely would be okay with that. I think it feels like, you know, the other models in the game, you know, this got a lot of hype about how big they were and how big they, like their rules are. Like they count as 20 or 30 models for objectives and stuff like that. I don't know if the models really feel that big. Like scale-wise outside of the rules, I think it's fine. I think they go well without being almost like comically too big. Because if these are like really tiny, like if he was even bigger than this guy, I would love a model that big, but then it almost sort of makes them not have a place and you almost need like another model in between, which would have been fine as well if we got like two kits, like a mega gargant and then a mega gargant, you know, for like, whoops, for your different characters, you know, give a little more diversity to the army. But that's not what we got. That's not where we are. Let's not talk too much about what we wish we had. You know, that just, you know, down that road leads to disappointment. That's actually pretty good right there. All right, so what we're going to do now, what I kind of want to do when I talk about not necessarily having this be the end all be all, right? Like this is a little smooth piece done in plastic. It's got some lines and stuff, but I really want to add a lot of texture that kind of matches some of this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the corner of this, and we're going to start just drawing lines in. And they're going to look okay once we get started, but then as we get like everything in there, it's going to start looking really good. All right, whoops. So you can see it's not anything too crazy or too specific. Doing a little texture like this. We'll do it on the other side. Just to give the underside of this a little texture. Whoops. Stay in frame, Tim. Stay in frame. And then, you know, where the ridges go down sort of to match, let's make those a little deeper. We'll put a little bit more in there. Something like that. And then we'll do it on the next one where it goes down and gets a little deeper. And I don't want them running right on top of each other, because then I'm just going to have one line. But if I can get a couple of little deep lines in there. And this, the ripples get a little uneven, and we can just sort of do that by just offsetting a couple in here. Because in this part, I wasn't really trying to make them all exact. But so we're looking at something like that. And that'll look really good once it's done. And if you can put a little texture in like that, that's going to hide the fact that it's like green stuffed. Like a lot of times green stuff just kind of gets left, where you don't put in that little extra detail to put like a little texture or something like that in. And texture really is just, it's just some sort of like pattern, right? So whatever tools you have handy, you can sort of use that. You know what else we could do? I bet if we were really being smart, we could have used some sort of like, almost like the end of a pen or something like that to sort of like push in little holes and then sort of push that stuff around and sculpt it. But I don't have anything set up like that. And I've tried little things like that, and it doesn't actually work kind of as good as it sounds, but that's just sort of an example of how you can kind of find things to make a texture. You know, whatever you're trying to repeat or do, you can do that with a lot of different things. Like one of my sculpting tools I haven't really used here, but it's a bit of one of those little round posts of a sprue just glued to the end of a dental tool that broke, because that just happened to be the shape that I need. Oh, you know what? I forgot about this one. This is a great one, because it's got a little bit of bend, but not much. This is actually great for doing these kind of lines. See that? I forgot that that's what I use this for a lot. But then because it's metal and it's a lot firmer, you still have a little bit of give in it, so you can kind of brush it a little bit. But you can really kind of push them in a little bit more where you need to, so push that in there. Push that in there. Right, and this isn't really fancy what I'm doing, right? We're just doing it over and over and over again. There's a little bit of hardened or not mixed green stuff there. And that'll be fine. We'll cover it up with something. The other thing too, yeah, you can cover up a lot of mistakes either later or with something else. Use that as an opportunity to get creative, right? Like these gargants have a bunch of arrows. Maybe that's the spot where I just drill an arrow and an arrow went right through the tentacle. That might look kind of cool. And I can use it as a spot to hide it. So don't get frustrated, you know? It's just another problem to solve. All right, let's put in some more deeper grooves here with this bad boy. You hear that tool sticking? The other thing too, actually, now that I did some of them with that softer clay shaper and some of this one they're a little sharper, that gives some little depth and something a little different to the look what I'm doing to my hand, to the texture. And I think I want to put a little bit of this, not as much, on the other side. So we'll put a deeper one in there. That's where a groove is. Put a deeper one in there. Deeper one in there. This is kind of stretched out, so any deeper ones would be kind of pulled. So they won't go kind of as deep there, but here they would actually be a bit deeper, folding over. Really push that in. Something you don't see, and you might hear a little bit, I'm definitely licking the tool a lot. I told you I'm a tool licker. That's what she said. Sorry. And I meant sorry for being off frame. I'm not sorry about that's what she said joke. Like, those are classic jokes. You don't like those jokes, you can get out. You can leave my channel right now. Focus. Yeah, I've got to keep turning this in a lot of different angles, so I'm sorry if I keep going off camera. I am trying, I am trying. Riley, I am Riley. All right. This is going to need a little bit of work anyway. I also want to put just a little bit in here. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit. All right, but we need to finish doing the little ribs on the back. And we're going on another 20 minutes. So you probably missed about 30 minutes. So this is probably about, this green stuff is definitely starting to get a little harder to work with at this point. So I'm definitely having to like press harder to do these things. But we still have a little bit of work time left with it. We're just pushing it down. And it's really all the same thing over and over, obviously, at this point. So you're just kind of, if you're really watching this, God bless you. Oh, I used 110% today. I said, oh, you know, sometimes you got to do 110% or something like that. And I sort of said it jokingly, but then I also made the joke that, you know, I don't know, I think that's a weird expression to use a lot. You got to give 110%. Well, you can't give more than 100. It's just like a cliche line to use. Let me give 110%. Let me give 110%. All right, so then we just kind of want to smooth that out so it's not as like just a dip, like it tapers off a little bit to go back up. See, this is like a spot where you got to watch out that you don't do one of those right there. Some little creases in here I kind of don't like. So if we can kind of push them out while doing this, that'll be great. And these are all looking a little bit more, I think, dramatic than I want. So let's just try to push them in. Some of these are a little harder to push into because depending on the bend and where I put the green stuff, some of them it's not the green stuff isn't as deep to where the you know, the hardened green stuff is that was underneath that we used as part of our skeleton to give us something for the green stuff to stick to and to like hold its place so it wasn't just sliding around the metal. Because with all the pushing that we're doing here, if you can imagine doing it on like that round armature, it would have just pushed and then it would have gotten loose around it. It would have been a loose affiliation to millionaires and billionaires and babies. That is also a song. That is also a dropped arm. How are we gonna get the leverage we need? There we go. There we go. Yeah, I'm not really getting anywhere pushing here. There's not much green stuff here. It goes down to the stuff underneath pretty quick. But we can push it a little bit. I don't know if you can hear that. Probably not with this mic, but some motorcycle just driving by. I guess maybe driving by is not there. It was a little bit off in the distance, but I could hear him gunning it. All right, and then I'm not going to put one of those ridges once we get to kind of the wide part right here. So this will be the last one. Then we'll do one more in between. So as the green stuff hardens, your technique will change a little bit in terms of like either maybe what tools you're using or how much pressure you're applying, right? Because since it's starting to cure, it's not moving as fast. It can be a little more aggressive, but even once you start pushing stuff out of the way, as it starts to lose its workability, you'll push it and then it will kind of push back. So it almost gets some like springy characteristics to it because it's starting to harden in that shape. And while it's still soft enough to kind of bend, it's starting to form its, its final shape. So sometimes you'll do something like this as it's, if it's a really big piece or you waited too long, and then you'll go back to it and it's not really the way you bent it or doesn't have the marks that you did. I get that a lot with textures because textures are one of the last things that I do, obviously, because I'm still sculpting. So then when you go to put the textures in, it looks like the line's there, and then you go back and then the line's not there, or it's not as pronounced. So sometimes you might have to hit it a little harder. So I'm actually kind of liking this little look that we're getting. See that? I'm kind of getting those lines through that. So pay attention when you're sculpting and what you're doing. And a lot of the success I've had with green stuffing and sculpting is all, I wouldn't go as far as to say by like accident, but it's like, it's not necessarily something I intended to do, but got a result that I liked. I was like, oh, let's go with that. So this will also be kind of cool because if we have like an up and down texture this way and then a horizontal texture that way, that'll give some nice contrast. Some nice juxtaposition, if you will, right? So we've got some horizontal movement and some vertical movement, which will be kind of pleasing to the eye for someone that's really checking this model out. I got some weird stuff going on here. This might be one of those areas we really gotta do something with after the fact to try to fix. So, or maybe not after the fact to fix, but that might be a spot that we have to cover something up. So there might be, maybe there'll be something hanging off his tentacle. Maybe we'll do some rope around it. And it'll have something hanging there, right? It's just another problem for us to solve. So, but it's going to start hardening here soon, so there's not going to be a whole lot I'm going to be able to do about certain things here. Like some of it I can still shape, but I couldn't really get a big crease out at this point. It's just not going to come out. Push that a little bit more. We just put a little bit of push that back. Let's use some different parts of the tool, get some different size little channels here. We're way off camera, sorry. We're way out of frame, just a bit outside. I realized when I was doing my editing that there were two lines I was trying to remember. One was just a bit outside, and then was exact science is not an exact science. And then I was like, I remembered, the thing from Wild Things, but that wasn't the line I was really trying to remember. It's when he was saying exact science is not an exact science, and that is David Bowie from The Prestige, when he's playing Nikola Tesla. Talking to Hugh Jackman's character. What was his name? Something with a D. What was his name? Great movie, though, if you haven't seen The Prestige. I was talking with someone today who hadn't seen The Departed or The Other Guys. And they came up because, Mark Wahlberg's in The Departed, and he's got that line when they're doing that sting operation that they screw up. And he's like, who are you? He's like, I'm the guy that does his job. You must be the other guy. But then Mark Wahlberg was also in a movie later with Will Ferrell called The Other Guys, which is a great, great movie. I'd have to say underrated in the sense that just not a lot of people have seen it. Anybody that's seen it rates it highly. So I don't know if that's really the same thing as being underrated. I think underrated is more right. Like a lot of people have seen it and it just doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Whereas The Other Guys, it gets the recognition it deserves from the people that have seen it, but not enough people have seen it. And I don't know why. I don't know if they didn't do a lot of promotion when it came out or what the deal was, why it just didn't get the credit it deserves. But it's a really good movie. Really good film. All right, we're losing the ability to work with this stuff. It's starting to get harder. But it's like it looks pretty good. You know, and again, if we take it from a distance, you know, I've been up really close to it, so I actually probably should do this. It's still a little rough. It's a little rougher than I want. I thought I'd like that kind of like rough texture. It's just a little too rough. But I think we're almost at the perfect stage to really be able to smooth that out, because we can put more pressure in and not have as much of an impact. So we're probably right where we need to be for this work. Like, we're losing the ability to do detail. But it really isn't detail work I'm trying to remove. We're just trying to smooth out this texture. Can we smooth that out? Here we gotta smooth you out. All right, where are the little grooves across? Yeah, since I've done this a bit here, I'm starting to figure it out. I can just kind of push in pretty deep. And even those little lines from pushing in aren't a big deal, because then I can, when I do this, that's not too bad. Smooth that out a little. We're getting close though, internet. We're getting close. Well, that's a bit rough there. That's a little bit rough there. That's really close to where we're going to want it. It's a little bit of a groove. Oh, we just push that in. Yeah, this is the one spot here I'm not super happy with. All right, let's revisit this guy just a little bit. Oops, can we bump the camera? We sure can. All right, we're at 30 minutes again, so this is like just about perfect. So we are going to do the little suckers tomorrow. Let's put a little bit of a line in here. Nothing too crazy, just to really give it a little bit of definition there. Still need to do a little bit of something on the back of this. I know I didn't want to put any ripples there, but I don't really kind of want it just sort of left rough like that. So I'm just doing little circles, pushing, varying the amount of pressure that I'm putting. So it kind of puts different levels of little dips and stuff in there, and then sort of changing the angle of the tool. So We're getting kind of different kind of like little bits of pattern in there. It's real subtle, but I just don't want it smooth. Like, I guess I want it smooth, but you know what I mean? Not like one flat surface. I want there to be a little bit of texture there. But this is sort of like a little rubbery fish, right? So we just want to put a little something in there. Give it a little bit of something. So we're just turning the tool. All right, so that's not a bad tentacle, I don't think. You're getting a really shiny version of it because when you work with tools like this and you're keeping it really smooth, the green stuff just gets shiny. I don't like quite how high that is there. This is freaking me out, this stuff, because I keep thinking I'm getting my finger in green stuff. But you smooth those out a little. I could probably just fuss with this all night. So I think we're gonna leave. I think that's close to where we want it. I think once we get paint on it, some texture, I'm thinking of doing sort of like an orange, mostly yellow, but maybe yellow with a little bit of orange to it, and then some like close to, maybe not close to black, but a really dark brown, kind of some sort of like mottled, spotted type texture, like an octopus that's kind of changing its colors, and then kind of I think like a really pale, almost white underneath here. I think it's gonna look rad. But now we can put it on here to cure over it. Whoops, well that's, can we get this off too while it's still warm? If this gets like cold while that's on there, this is gonna be hard to pull off, and I'm not so much worried about it down there. This is what I was worried about. I don't think there was something on the end of that rope. All right, I think that impromptu solution saved that bit from getting broken off. All right, so we got a Kraken eater with a Kraken arm. That's a Kraken job. All right, off, off, on, on. Yeah. All right, 38 minutes. Definitely time to stop. I will see you tomorrow, Internet Kisses.